The exploitation of the escalating crisis in the Middle East continues, with the US using it to continue mass surveillance programs on their own citizens, just like after 9/11, which went brilliantly for everyone in the world. Hello there, you awakening wonders. Thanks for joining us on our voyage to truth and freedom, which we must undertake together. Yeah, I've got daughters. Thank you so much for staying with us at a time of crisis and difficult conversations that have to be undertaken, because it seems that the more crisis there are, the more exploitation by centralized authority is undertaken in order to, for example, introduce mass surveillance bills that were first introduced after 9/11 but have continued ever since, usually under the auspices of spying on terrorists or preventing terrorism, homegrown terrorists, far-flung terrorists, terror everywhere and not a drop to drink. Terrible as this crisis is for everybody involved, difficult though it is to see a solution that's not going to mean havoc across the world, death and suffering of vulnerable people everywhere, we have to continue this conversation along the lines of who is exploiting it and to what ends. The mass surveillance programs that were introduced after 9/11, as Edward Snowden pointed out at the time, were against all of our civil rights. These bills and measures we used to spy on US citizens abroad, foreign citizens elsewhere, domestic citizens. It's a very messy piece of legislation, and it's continuing. Have a look at this conversation between a member of the legacy media and a member of the government, where they talk about this legislation as if it's all upside, as if this legislation hasn't been continually misused to spy on people unnecessarily and illegally.
So I want to turn to something that was discussed earlier in this program, and that is Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which is up for renewal. It's a complicated issue.
Complicated issue is euphemism for it's illegal. They're spying on their own citizens. The government are spying on you. But notice how a member of the legacy media just hands a question to a government official in a way that's just entirely, in a sense, I suppose, collaborative. This is a journalist. This is a journalist. Do you remember there was a time when a journalist goes, excuse me, what the hell's going on? Why are you using this piece of legislation to spy on your own citizens? How on earth can Hamas's terrible attack on Israel and the spiraling disaster that's emerging from it justify us spying on our own citizens? Tell me now how these things are connected. That's not how the media treats the state. The media, the state, and corporatism are all 100% aligned against you.
Just take 30 or 40 seconds and explain to this audience.
I mean, look at the atmosphere of this. They're just a couple of mates having a chat. The subject of this is, just so I can give you a different interpretation, is it all right for the government to spy on citizens without their permission? Remember Edward Snowden's revelations, like where he had a sort of a freaky meltdown. Did you ever see that film, Citizen 4? Oh my God, they're spying on us. Your phone, they can just turn it on. They're spying on us all the time. They're capturing all of our data. Now, look at the tone here. Now, listen, let's take a 30 seconds or so to discuss this. Why is it so important that we don't have any law and order except for poor and ordinary people?
Just take 30 or 40 seconds and explain to this audience.
30 or 40 seconds. Yeah, let's not spend, for example, hours and hours justifying why we should be able to spy on all of our citizens, why it's ordinary to expect that you are like a subject or a child and the government is like your parent and you have no power, and it's okay to tax you and tell you what to do and lie to you and spy on you and deceive you. What's been going on for the last 3 years? Have you not noticed yet that crises are used to generate opportunity for the powerful? And this is another example of that. Disgusting, complicated and awful as this escalating war in the Middle East is. And the ramifications, in my view, and in the view of many others, of course, have only just begun. The impact of this on all of our lives is not yet even measurable. Look at how it's being discussed by a member of the legacy media and a member of the government. Could you spend 30 or 40 seconds telling everyone exactly why they should just do as they're told? I don't need that long. Do as you're told.
What Section 702 allows you to do and why you think it's so important?
Well, thanks for the opportunity, because let me tell you, David.
Well, thanks for not asking me any difficult questions or saying, this is disgusting, it's abhorrent. If this was taking place in a country that we had some grievance against, we would use it as an example of it being a banana republic or a crazy dictatorship. It's so important to me that I can just trot out trite answers and never be challenged. That way we can keep people dumb and distracted, particularly with the ongoing attempts to crush dissenting voices in the independent media. And thank you, by the way, for helping with that.
If we lose this authority, it is catastrophic for our national security efforts. Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act is a foreign intelligence authority that allows our intelligence community to go after the communications of non-U.S. persons.
Of course, the central premise of state authority is that the state is protecting you from an external threat. Here's something interesting. The state is the threat. The state is the biggest threat you are ever going to face. The state in alignment with the media and a globalist agenda is more threat to you than anything. And I'm not suggesting there aren't threats out there. I've got eyes. I've been watching what's been going on in the news. Plainly, we're living in a fractured world where better voices need prevail. But granting authority to the state with a legacy media that never asks any difficult questions, that just amplifies their message, is not going to help you. They already have made their mind up. They want this piece of legislation, and then they just look around for opportunity. That's good. Hamas have killed all of those people in Israel. We'll use that. It's mercenary. It's appalling. There's no time spent on, oh my God, what are we going to do? Let's look at this with an open mind. How the hell have we gotten into this situation, and how are we going to get out of it? By spying on Americans, even though I'm literally saying now we're not going to do that?
Operating overseas. Let me underscore that. Non-U.S. persons, foreign individuals operating outside the United States. It is vital to our ability to understand threats, from cyber threats to nation-state adversaries to Russia, Chinese, Iran, North Korea plans and intentions across a whole host of threats.
Oh, just like a list of things to be terrified of. What a terrifying and awful world it is when viewed through this lens. There's no question that there are competing ideologies. There's no question that the world can be a pretty terrifying place, but one of the things that's most terrifying is the willingness of the state to exploit crisis in order to assert more power over you, not anybody else. They're spying on China anyway. They're spying on Iran anyway. They're spying on everybody anyway. They're spying on you anyway. This is essentially PR.
In my various roles, including this one and the one I occupied previously as President Obama's Homeland Security and Counterterrorism Advisor, I spent every morning looking at the President's daily brief, the morning intelligence that has come in overnight on the most serious threats. A huge amount of that intelligence is gathered as a result of this authority. Now, why is it vital to the job I do today, to the job of the FBI, whose job is to protect the United States, to protect the homeland?
I don't know that that's entirely true. I feel like there's been one or two stories lately about the FBI creating fake crises in order to arrest ordinary Americans. I feel like there are several stories about the FBI infiltrating organizations and creating false flag situations. Let me know in the chat and the comments if you know what I'm referring to. In a sense, what the media and the government are demanding of you in this conversation is that you trust them and that you regard them as kind of parents. Is that the relationship that you want? Particularly when you know that these are malign, corrupt, untrustworthy parents. And indeed, don't you actually just want authority in your own life, in your own community, your own relationship with a higher power, your own relationship with one another? Do you want the constant intercession of the state? Of course you don't. So how are they going to get you to comply? By terrifying you continually and denying that there's any alternative.
It's because our ability to actually take action, and the FBI is solely responsible for taking action to prevent what happens from those adversaries here at home.
Yeah, they do prevent them, but they also cause a lot of the ones they actually prevent by infiltrating those groups and getting them all jazzed up about some crazy, you know what you should do, bomb that building. It's not as simple as that. What is simple is that the state wants power and that the media doesn't want to ask difficult questions.
Their ability to do that successfully is really dependent on their ability to have that information from 702 and to be able to access it and understand it. So what do I mean by that? Our ability to understand what China, Russia, Iran are doing in cyberspace against our critical infrastructure, we get to understand that because of this authority, and then the FBI gets to act to prevent that, to mitigate those threats, because of their ability to use that information and to understand it.
Okay, well, that sounds terrifying and reasonable enough. Let's have a look at some alternative perspectives and analysis on this piece of legislation and how it might be exploited and used against you. And just remember what's been going on for the last 3 years and how crises have been used to manipulate you. The people that are talking to you there didn't, after the 2008 financial crash, go, we're just going to investigate these financial interests, find out exactly what went on, and make sure that the perpetrators are handled judiciously. Did they? During the whole pandemic crisis? Did the legacy media ask relevant questions of people in power, people that are making decisions, or did they unquestionably amplify their message? You let me know in the chat before you grant any more authority to these corrupt individuals and corrupt institutions to spy on you whenever they want to. Not that they really need your authority or permission. During a Senate briefing last week, a federal counter-terrorism official cited the October the 7th Hamas attack while urging Congress to reauthorize a sprawling and controversial surveillance program repeatedly used to spy on US citizens on US soil. Of course, the conflation of these ideas is important if you want to legitimize new legislation that grants ongoing authoritative powers. You have to say, this is like that in order to do this. In the same way that the funding of the Ukraine-Russia conflict and the conflict in Israel and a potential conflict between China and the US are all being bundled together financially. It's an odd way of approaching things. I recognize that there are budgets and that there are departments, but when there are complex and disparate and distinct conflicts, wouldn't it be better to look at them individually and recognize that these complex ideas need individual analysis? I don't know. Let me know in the chat. As evidenced by the events of the past month, the terrorist threat landscape is highly dynamic, and our country must preserve counter-terrorism fundamentals to ensure constant vigilance, said Director of the National Counter-Terrorism Centre, Christine Abizade, to the Senate Committee on Homeland Security after making repeat references to Hamas's attack on Israel. Constant vigilance. That's an Orwellian phrase, constant vigilance. There will never be a time where there is not vigilance. Do you remember during the pandemic? Be vigilant. We must be vigilant. Do you know now that a lot of the messaging that we received was inaccurate? And a lot of that messaging they knew was inaccurate when they gave us it. So this kind of language, the perpetuation of a state of continual fear, is necessary in order to have a compliant and obedient population, which is what a lot of people have become. A lot of people will watch this and just go, oh, I see, that's why you need surveillance. If you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. You've got something to fear, all right. It's centralized authority that one day might decide that you are its enemy. She pointed to Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which enables the US government to gather vast amounts of intelligence, including about US citizens. What? I thought that it's not. Under the broad category of foreign intelligence information without first seeking a warrant. Like seeking a warrant, like that's legislative protection. Do you see how key principles are just being discarded as centralized power just coalesces and grows and augments like some fierce Thanos-like beast at the center of government? The controversial program is set to expire at the end of the year, and lawmakers sympathetic to the intelligence community are scrambling to protect it. According to Representative Jim Himes, the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, plans are underway to prepare a stopgap measure to preserve Section 702 of FISA. I'm getting sick of that sound. As a long-term reauthorization containing reforms is hammered out. No wonder we're all so happy to pay such enormous taxes. Let's pause this important story because we can't make this content without you, and we can't make them without our partners, like our partners that I want to talk to you about today, the Tax Network. The IRS October 15 tax deadline has passed, and I know some of you will be feeling the pressure. Fuel prices spiral, food prices spiral. Now there's a tax bill. If sorting through the complexities of expenses, payments and deductions has caused you failure to file, obviously you know that it could result in penalties piling up on your tax debt. The attorneys at Tax Network USA have successfully saved clients, get ready for this, over $1 billion in tax debts. Whether you're looking at a $10,000 tax debt or a $1 million challenge, they can help with a settlement. Even if you haven't filed in 1 year, 5 years or a whole decade, they are ready to help. Professionals at Tax Network can help resolve all tax cases, no matter how it started. Go to taxnetworkusa.com/brand to get help now. That's taxnetworkusa.com/brand. And let's get back into this difficult content. Created in 1978, FISA was vastly expanded in the aftermath of 9/11 to provide federal law enforcement and intelligence agencies enhanced surveillance powers. While it was originally described as a way to collect information on foreign entities, the law enables the targeting of US citizens in contact with foreign nationals. So you're all right, as long as you don't speak to anyone foreign, ever. Hey, you said this legislation won't be used on US citizens. Well, that was before you spoke to Juanita and Ahmed there. Oh, but they're my friends. Not anymore. This loophole makes it easy for federal agencies to target wide swathes of the US population, and it has for years been condemned by civil liberties advocates who view it as a clear-cut instance of governmental overreach. The 702 authority has been abused to such a great extent that President Joe Biden's own Intelligence Advisory Board recommended curtailing the FBI's ability to manipulate the authority to investigate and prosecute Americans. That's amazing. That's like when someone's being beaten up by gangsters. Gangster going, I think that's enough now, boss. What did you say? Nothing. You carry on. Oh, God. My soul, my spirit.
Johnny, leave him alone, man. He's had enough. All the sides when he's had enough, man.
Even people whose job it is to spy on people. Like, I didn't get into the FBI to be involved in this level of spying, man. It's starting to hurt. Quiet you, or I'll spy on you so hard. The Brennan Center for Justice last month issued a document noting that the FBI has used the 702 authority to spy on US representatives, senators, civil liberties organizations, political campaigns, and activists. They're not terrorists, are they? None of those people are like, well, I mean, I don't know. It's a very loose term these days, terrorists, but it's very different from her. It's like it was just going to be Kim Jong-un and a couple of proper baddies out of Team America.
Oh, hello. Great to see you again, Hans.
When it was like, no, just around like crazy ayatollahs and that, and the baddies we're not calling civil liberties organisations and activists, little old ladies, cats, dogs. Mr. Rogers, we had to spy on that guy. He seemed too nice. And a lot of those dogs in his neighbourhood, we've spied on them as well. Civil libertarians have proposed various reforms to the authority, including limits on the types of communication the FBI can search, the implementation of stringent warrant requirements to restrict FISA searches, and an end to the loophole that allows federal agencies to surveil Americans by purchasing data from private sector brokers. Oh God, America, what are we going to do? It's really badly broken, isn't it? So like, look at what the lady said there, Lisa O'Monaco. She didn't sort of go because she was trying to do it in 30 seconds in compliance and collaboration with the bloody mainstream media over there. She didn't go, well, it's not strictly true. Any Americans that speak to someone with a different accent or name, we can spy on. Plus, we can spy on Americans even if they've not spoken to anyone foreign by using a private sector broker. It's the sort of same as when they try and pass a bill that prevents people in Congress buying stocks and shares in companies they regulate. They go, this must be stopped. This must be stopped. That's why we're passing this new legislation that stops it. Although, of course, there is a loophole where a dependent child can purchase some stocks and shares. So, you know what? You don't like the dependent child? Come on, let the dependent child through the loophole. Get him through the loophole. Although the American political and media establishment will not say so, it's well known that FISA Section 702 was passed in 2008 to provide a legal fig leaf for secret US intelligence and FBI surveillance of electronic communications of people both inside and outside the country. This secret spying activity, which compels the cooperation of communication service providers and internet and social media platforms in conspiracy against fundamental constitutional rights, was exposed in detail for the first time by Edward Snowden in 2013. We all remember that, of course, because Edward Snowden was declared a hero, and that's why we still, to this day, have Edward Snowden Day, where people who speak out against corruption, who speak out on behalf of ordinary citizens everywhere, are celebrated. I'm going to probably dress up as Edward Snowden or Julian Assange myself for Edward Snowden. Wait a minute, no, that was a dream. Edward Snowden's exiled in Russia now for trying to tell people the truth. As explained by the Electronic Frontier Foundation, EFF, Section 702 authorises the US government to routinely collect and search the online communications of innocent Americans without a warrant through what are commonly called upstream and PRISM, now called downstream surveillance, because PRISM's what it was called when Edward Snowden made those revelations. What are we going to do? Snowden's revealed all this. What's the point of government? What's the point in what we're doing if all we're doing is acting against the interests of American people? I've got it. What is it, boss? I look up to you. We're going to change, the name, from PRISM to downstream. God bless America. These activities violate Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable searches and seizures. None of them amendments are doing anything, are they? People don't care about them. They might as well have not done them amendments. The details of PRISM were disclosed by Snowden in a series of documents that indicated it is the #1 source of raw intelligence used for NSA analytic reports. The program enables the National Security Agency and Central Intelligence Agency to gather targeted electronic communications from the major internet service providers on demand without a warrant, store them in massive databases, and search through them as they see fit. So they just capture everything en masse, just get it all together in case they need it later. It's probably happened to you. It's definitely happened to me. I mean, it's terrifying. This is terrifying and should be stopped. And the only way that you would legitimise that is, I suppose, one, if you were terrified all the time, and two, if you trusted the government, which none of us do. And I suppose if you felt there's just no alternative and it's just over and you just run out of energy and you've not got enough power in yourself or inner resources to go, no, this can't go, well, this can't be right. right. That every time anyone speaks out against this kind of stuff, they end up being crushed and destroyed. We've got to do something about this. But that's actually quite exhausting. So I don't know, maybe just lay down and die in a ditch. In a letter dated February the 28th to the 4 leaders of the Senate and House, Attorney General Merrick Garland and Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines say the prompt renewal of the surveillance law is urgent because it has proven invaluable again and again in protecting American lives and US national security. I suppose if you look at these things as kind of code, American lives and US national security, then it sort of makes sense. It's the ability of the system to continue to sustain its model and suppress any kind of counter-narrative or opposition. If you just replace that with American lives and US national security, then it makes sense. It has been successful because it allows people to be continually targeted, for all of us to live in a sort of state of fear, like we're being perpetually observed, that we can't trust ourselves or one another, that we don't have any privacy, that we don't have any right to privacy, that privacy is akin to criminality. And all that stuff is just throbbing away in some terrifying database somewhere. And if ever you become a problem, they can unperson you pretty quickly, unless you're perfect, and none of us are. The Biden administration officials give a sketchy description of the procedures of the FISA law, including the functioning of the Secret Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, oh this bloody place, and its annual comprehensive review of the program. FISC almost never denies a request for warrantless surveillance. After nearly 40 years of its existence, the court approved. Look at this statistic is so near 100%. I can't believe that someone even bothered to get a calculator out and work out what it is. 99.998% of the applications. 99.998% of the applications, effectively making a rubber stamp for the intelligence agencies. Well, we're going to have to get this past FISC, so you better prepare a watertight case. Can we please have a warrant to... Yes. Well, I didn't finish the sentence. You don't need to. Rubber stamped. 99.8%. That's beyond maths, so it's almost more than 100%, which is impossible, as you know. The letter goes on to say that FISC has consulted with outside advisors on multiple occasions as it exercises its rigorous and ongoing oversight of the US government's implementation of and compliance with these procedures. Can't be that rigorous if 99.998% are passed. Let's scrutinize that. Oh, where's my glasses? Let's get a microscope and a telescope. Then they can balance each other out. Now, where's my calculator? We've approved of everything. That's down to 5 decimal places, approving of spying on you since 1998.99998. However, as numerous oversight and compliance reports have shown, those performing the surveillance have routinely violated the procedures of FISA law and continue to carry out queries and electronic spying on US citizens, claiming that such crimes were an inadvertent mistake. No one has ever been charged or prosecuted for these violations of the US Constitution. Even though there's 99.998% chance of getting a warrant, they still can't be bothered saying it was an inadvertent mistake. Oh no, I've accidentally spied on a bunch of people. That's so many layers of corruption, hypocrisy and ineptitude that, again, it's another one of those stories, like when you look at the pandemic and what happened for a couple of hours, that you realise, oh God, we're going to have to completely reevaluate our entire system of government. There are entire agencies and regulatory bodies that have to be totally disbanded. Oh no, we're living in a nightmare. It's the Matrix. But even a situation where it'll be easy to just go, can you give us a warrant, please? Yes, I always give warrants. I've never seen an investigation that I don't rubber stamp. They can't be bothered, I suppose, because it's sort of pointless. Actually, I'm starting to identify, well, what's the point? If they're going to give you one anyway, you might as well sort of not bother. I'm starting to identify with these corrupt, mad spies. In 2020 and early 2021, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, I've heard of those guys, misused the Section 702 database over 278,000 times. That means they got to 278,000 times. Wait a minute, should we see if the FBI are misusing this database? Yes, let's go through it. Where's that goddamn calculator? It's 100,000 times 278,000. It's over 278. I can't keep doing these maths. I need to work out what percentage of warrants I issue. Gotta get as close to that 100 as possible. The persistent and widespread violations by the FBI, persistent, that means they're doing it all the time, and it's not like narrow, it's all spilling out everywhere. Which part of the Department of Justice includes searches for information related to crime victims, protesters arrested after the 2020 police killing of George Floyd, and people suspected of breaching the US Capitol on January 6, 2021. Oh, so here's an opportunity for the two apparent extremes of American political life to come together. Whether you're like Black Lives Matter and defund the police, or I absolutely love Trump and the election was stolen. all of that, the state doesn't like you, doesn't trust you, and is spying on you, you'd be better off forming an alliance with your worst cultural enemy than going, well, I'll just hope that my side of the government wins, and then, then you'll be for it, my apparent enemies. That's stupid. Albert Fox Khan, founder and executive director of the Surveillance Technology Oversight Project, argued that the data collected under Section 702 is nothing short of a loaded gun aimed at the heart of democracy, a lawless digital dragnet systematically abused by those who swore to uphold the law. Rubber stabbed. Swore to uphold the law with some distance from a reliable model. Any room for improvement? No. As civil rights groups warned would happen, FBI agents just couldn't help themselves. Rather than follow the limits that were supposed to protect Americans from this international dragnet, agents used this terrifying tool to target protesters and domestic suspects. And the abuses should be chilling to all of us, no matter where we sit on the political spectrum, as was just demonstrated. It would have been disturbing if these sorts of egregious examples happened just a few times, but to see the FBI's systematic misuse of these resources proves that it and the rest of the federal government, and here's the conclusion, simply can't be trusted to wield this sort of power. Remember the interview you've just seen? Well, this is why we need to review it because of Korea and Iran. Wait a minute. It says here you simply can't be trusted to wield this sort of power. Who wrote that? It certainly wasn't Fisk. So there you are. There is no crisis that will not be exploited by the state to create more opportunity for power, for spying, for surveillance, for censorship, for control. Wherever you sit on the political spectrum, you could be a social justice warrior that believes in the most progressive new idea. You could believe in the most traditional, religious, orthodox. It does not matter. You could be absolutely pro-Palestine. This is a disaster. This is appalling. This is disgusting. Or absolutely pro-Israel. What do you expect us to do? We've had this. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to them. All that matters to them is the ability to absolutely control you. And they have that ability. And they have that ability in spades because guess what we're doing? Arguing with one another while they pass regulations and legislation that enables them to perpetuate this corruption that's just been described here as a loaded gun pointing at the heart of democracy by those who swore to uphold the law. Can you envisage any deeper corruption? Yes. Perhaps the way the pandemic was handled, perhaps the way these wars are funded, perhaps the way the Pentagon is audited. We have to do something about all of it, and we have to do something about all of it right now. But that's just what I think. Why don't you let me know what you think in the comments and the chat? If you enjoy this content, remember we stream live every day at these times, an entertaining show where we tackle these issues head on. Become a part of our movement so that we can unite together, decentralized, unified against corruption, severing the head of the beast, moving forward into the glorious new era. That is our only option now. More important than any of that, though, is if you can, please stay free.